What is going on, guys? This is Miasin. So for some reason, there has been somewhat of a recent trend in the TCG where even though Pot of Prosperity is still a 3, actually completely dodged the ban list, a lot of players, including myself actually, are choosing to cut a Prosperity from some of their deck list. We're slowly but surely kind of understanding why this card really does have some drawbacks, even though it's an extremely good card, and it should still be played in a bunch of decks. However, with that said, there are still some decks that would rather play some other cards over Prosperity, and in this video, I will kind of try to help you guys understand why that would be the case. Anyways, before we move any further, I would really appreciate you guys if you could smash the like and subscribe button for me real quick. Thank you guys so much. You're the GOAT, and now let's proceed. Alright, so first things first about Prosperity. Obviously, it's an insane consistency card. I mean, it's Pot of Duality multiplied by 2, basically, and it allows you to keep special summoning, but you can't draw cards during the turn you activate Prosperity. You gotta choose between searching and drawing, but usually searching is more generic, drawing is a little more niche. So Prosperity is still extremely generic. There are some decks actually that do have some built-in draw engines, and sometimes they kind of have to choose like in a way between, you know, drawing maybe off of the Wanted or getting the Prosperity search, and they kind of have to go neg 1 in a way just for that extra consistency boost of Prosperity, but sometimes it doesn't really make that much sense since their deck is already extremely consistent in a way, and a very good example of that would be the Fire King deck. I mean, when you think about it, their deck is so insanely consistent that Prosperity honestly doesn't even bring that much to the deck. If anything, they're just going to be banishing 6 cards from their extra deck, but they're not going to be getting that much in return, because look at their amount of 1-card starters, especially post Phantom Nightmare. It's ridiculous. They have Ponyx, which is a 1-card starter basically, Sanctuary, as well as Fire King Island. These cards get their engine started, as well as Snake Eye Ash, which is a full-fledged 1-card starter through Nibiru or Droll, as well as Bonfire, which is also a very good 1-card starter because it gets you to Snake Eye Ash. So as long as you're not getting drolled on the Bonfire, it translates to drawing Snake Eye Ash actually. And there's also the Bellstar and Wanted. You see that? There's literally 7 cards that get your stuff going. This is ridiculous. This deck is so stupid consistent that even if you try to brick, it's basically impossible. And sometimes there's even like other combination of hands that still allow you to play even without these cards, because you can maybe like crash your Fire Monster, then trigger the Garunix, or you can still go like normal summon Arvata, and then when you negate something, then that triggers the Garunix and that makes you play the game. This deck is basically just never really bricking, and Prosperity, what it does is that it adds a brand new weakness to your deck that you could actually play around, and that would be losing to Droll out of nowhere. So the thing about Droll is that you really have to respect its existence, because it forces everyone honestly to play around it, because if you don't, then you're gonna be losing games that you shouldn't really be losing. And the worst feeling ever is when you search a search card off of like off of a card like Prosperity, for example, and then you get drolled because the card that you excavate or that you search is completely useless. Actually, you're not going to be able to use it. So if you go for Prosperity, you have to search a card that isn't a search card if you want it to be live, and you have to use your search cards before. But that renders Prosperity completely dead, because in the Fire King deck, quite literally all of your juice cards are search cards. Obviously, a card like Wanted can be used on the draw phase, but I've already explained how Wanted and Prosperity don't really mash well together, because Wanted does have a graveyard effect that allows you to draw 1 card, and it conflicts with the non-drawing ability of, non-drawing aspect of Prosperity. So that kind of sucks. And another really bad thing about Prosperity that I don't really like is that when you're playing a hand trap heavy deck such as Fire King, for example, Prosperity going second makes you excavate into potential hand traps, which won't fix your issue. You would have to Prosperity into board breakers if you really want to go somewhere. So Prosperity can still be extremely good in decks like, let's say, Rescue Ace, if they're not choosing to play that many hand traps and are rather playing cards like Super Polymerization or Forbidden Droplet. Prosperity into Super Polymerization and Forbidden Droplet is particularly good because of its interaction, these cards' interaction with the resolution window of searching a card. And I've made a video on that in the past, but basically, when you're searching a card on the resolution, because of the fact that you're turn player, you have turn player priority to be to use a spell speed 2 card or a spell speed 2 effect because before your opponent does. If there's no trigger effects happening, otherwise obviously you get to use your trigger effects, and then your opponent can respond with his trigger effects or his quick effects. But if there's no triggers, then you can use your quick effect first, and you can use Super Poly or Forbidden Droplet on the resolution of you adding it off of Prosperity, and your opponent will not be able to droll you. So it's one of the ways to kind of mitigate the drawback of Droll in a very crafty way, play, obviously. So if you're playing these cards, then Prosperity, there's really just no drawback. But if you're not, and you're just playing a bunch of hand traps, all you're doing, honestly, is just fueling Droll and Lock Bird against you, and making it even better when your deck is, again, like I said already, extremely consistent on its own without needing Prosperity. Not to mention that sometimes you can actually brick on too many Prosperities, you can brick on multiple copies in your hand, and that wouldn't really be very good, because banishing 6 cards can hurt depending on what deck you're playing, but having to banish 9 cards, maybe if you're using like a second copy, that's where it becomes very, very rough. So yeah, that does explain why you might see a lot of deck lists of Fire King choosing not to play with Prosperity, even though they technically could. And as a matter of fact, I actually had Prosperity in my deck list before, and I'm slowly but surely realizing that this card is maybe not it in the Fire King deck. Now, there is a second deck in which this logic is very similar, and that would be Silent Enforcer. Again, very similarly to Fire King, this deck has so many ways of getting its stuff going. There's Novox, Diviner, Silent Enforcing Barrier, Saphira, and Pre-Prep. And all these cards, indirectly or directly, so Novox and Diviner indirectly make you search cards, because they give you access to Silent Enforcing Barrier, which then searches Saphira. And again, the exact same theme is perpetuated because of the fact that you're searching a search card. So you're searching Saphira off of the barrier, and then Saphira searches your Skull Guardian. You are playing big time into Droll, unfortunately. So playing Prosperity on top of your engine that is already extremely consistent doesn't really add that much, honestly, to your deck, because you're probably not breaking with Silent Enforcer if you're building your deck correctly. And there's a lot of other ways to kind of fix the lack of consistency issue of even if there's not really one. I mean, you might sometimes brick a little bit, but it's still really not that bad. There's obviously better cards to play in certain situations, but Prosperity, I wanted to say in all my testing, I never really felt like I needed it that much. And again, because of the fact that I'm playing so many hand traps, I don't really want to be excavating hand traps, either going first or second, because at this point you might as well just play hand traps instead of Prosperity. So that's the thing, obviously, when you're playing a card like Prosperity, always tell yourself that it could have been something else. Now, on the exact same train of thought, another deck that I want to say follows a similar pattern would be the Sprite deck, because that deck does have the ability to play a lot of hand traps, and you obviously don't want to excavate hand traps off of a Prosperity. And this deck is extremely consistent. There's a lot of one-card starters. Nimble Beaver is a one-card starter. Swallowfrog is about to become a one-card starter once we get to Mirror Magic of the Ice Bear in Terminal World. I will be making a video on that very soon, don't worry. And then there is obviously Sprite Starter, which is a one-card starter, but it's a 3 now because of the ban list actually making it a little better. A lot of ways to get your stuff going, and you're not really losing to Droll, so why play Prosperity to make you play into Droll for no given reason? Again, it's the exact same problem. You might as well just play more engine starters at this point instead of Prosperity when you're playing hand traps. Now, in certain cases, you want to play Extravagance over Prosperity, for example in Labyrinth, because you want to have just a high amount of cards in your hand because all of your cards do the same thing. So in Labyrinth, for example, Extravagance is better because you want to fuel your Storvy Torvy or your Chandra so that you always have stuff to discard. And all of your cards literally are identical. I mean, Transaction Rollback, Crumple Toy Fell. You don't really care whether you have one or the other. It's not like if you're, I don't know, playing a deck like Altergeist where a hand of 5 cards can do nothing if you don't have like multi-faker access, for example. Another thing about Prosperity, again, is that it does make you play a little more into Shared Ride and Mistaken Arrest because you're playing more non-engine cards that search, but at the same time this is inevitable, so can't really blame yourself too much for that. And also it's a spell card, plays into anti-spell. If you can play maybe more quickly spell cards, that might be nice. Like I said, again, you're not trying to really play Prosperity in a deck with a lot of hand traps. But that's really all I had for this video. So you guys let me know how you feel about Prosperity in this format and moving forward in Yu-Gi-Oh! Do you think it was a good idea for Konami to make Prosperity dodge the ban list completely? I want to hear your guys' thoughts. Thank you guys so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys very soon. Peace.